Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the star of our show, Teri.
Hello, everyone. I'm Teri, your host, and I want to welcome you to this very special episode of The Music in Me. New York City. It's the city that never sleeps, the concrete jungle where dreams are made of, the home of musical magic, and the place I've dreamed of visiting for as long as I can remember. Guess what, everybody? I finally got to go there. And now I'm back, although I did not want to leave because I loved it there so much and I wanted to stay forever. It was everything that I had dreamed of and so much more. From the bright lights of Times Square to the magic of Broadway, I packed so much into 5 days and I can't wait to share it all with you. So this episode's going to be a little different from my normal episodes. I'm not going to be talking about music so much. I'm just going to tell you about my adventures in New York City. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that NYC has been at the top of my bucket list for as long as I can remember. Between the movies, the music, and my love for Broadway, I've always felt drawn to the city that never sleeps. And now that I finally got to go there, I have stories to share, so many stories. So in this episode, I'm going to be breaking down my trip day by day because I did so much while I was there. We went to iconic landmarks, had some incredible food, and of course, I got to experience 3 Broadway shows. So whether you've been to NYC before, dream of going someday, or just love hearing about new adventures, you're in for a treat. Last episode, I shared the playlist I made for my NYC trip. But here's the truth. I was so busy exploring the city and seeing the sights that I didn't even have time to listen to it. And honestly, I didn't mind one bit. The good news is I did get to listen to a few of those songs at key moments during my trip. Plus, in a city like New York, there's always music playing somewhere. Whether it's in a store, on the streets of Times Square, or in a theater. So my playlist came to life in a whole new way, and that was even better than just listening to my playlist. It was amazing. Before I get into my day-to-day adventures in New York City, let me tell you who I traveled with and where we stayed. I went on this adventure with a tour group of 18 women. And who doesn't love a girls' trip? I was excited for that. I personally got to travel with my mom, my sister, and my niece. And that was even better because they're 3 of my favorite people in the whole entire world. So that was great just to bond and just hang out with my favorite people. As I said, it was a tour group. So we did have a tour guide while we was in New York. He showed us all the sights and walked us around the streets of New York City. So it was very safe. I wasn't scared at all. I was just excited to see the sights. We stayed at the Hotel Edison right on 47th Street, which is close to Times Square and right in the heart of the theater district. There were theaters everywhere. So, I got excited every time I saw a theater because I love Broadway. All right, who's ready to hear about my New York City adventure? We'll start with day 1. My first day in New York City was so magical. The whole day was magical. I mean, when I woke up at the hotel to go to the airport, I was excited. We had an early flight, which meant we would get to New York early, and that would give us plenty of time to explore the Big Apple. So I was excited just to get to the city and explore. Thank goodness that on the plane, I was by a window because I really wanted to see New York City come into view as we were about to land. And it was amazing. I was so excited. I got some great pictures from the window. I did get to listen to the song I wanted to listen to at the airport, Welcome to New York by Taylor Swift, while I walked through the airport, and I did not cry. I was excited, but I did not cry, which I was very proud of myself and slightly surprised that I didn't cry when I got to New York. The Hotel Edison that we stayed in is so pretty, and it even had a doorman, which I loved. I thought that was cool because I'd only seen that on TV. Our room was not very big, and it was kind of cramped for 4 people, but hey, I wasn't there to spend time in the hotel room. I was there to explore the city of my dreams. Once we got settled in the hotel, my mom, sister, me, and my niece decided to go out on our own and explore the city. So we walked around Times Square. And my first glimpse of Times Square, my eyes were huge. I'm pretty sure my heart was pounding. I was just in awe because I'd only seen Times Square in the movies or on TV in general. And there I was, right in front of it. It was right in front of me. All those big, giant video screens everywhere, people everywhere. And I also got to see the place where the ball drops every New Year's Eve. The ball wasn't there, but the place where the ball drops was, because apparently the ball was under maintenance at that time. But that was still cool. I got a great picture of that. I was just looking around at everything. The one thing about Times Square is people are always trying to sell you something or hand you something, and there's people everywhere. So it's kind of hard to just walk straight and explore. If you stop, you get run over. But that was exciting. I don't live in a big city. I loved the excitement and the sounds of New York City. There was music playing in Times Square, so it was like my playlist was coming to life. You might be wondering, what is the first thing I had to eat in New York City? Was it a bagel? Was it pizza? Was it a hot dog off the street? Nope, it was grilled cheese. We went to this place called Junior's, and I decided to get this grilled cheese, and it was amazing. After that, me, my mom, sister, and niece decided to go on the Top View bus tour of the city. The night tour, so the lights were all on, and it was beautiful and amazing. I saw some amazing sights on the bus tour. We saw the Empire State Building, the Brooklyn Bridge. We went to Brooklyn, which I thought was exciting. We saw Little Italy, Chinatown. It was just amazing. I don't remember all the buildings that I took pictures of because, for one, my phone was about to die. We weren't really prepared to go on the bus trip, but they talked us into it by giving us a discount. We only had to pay for 2 of us out of the 4 of us, and they gave us the child price. So it was like, okay, it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience. We might as well. It was a little cold on the bus because we weren't prepared, so I didn't have a jacket, and it was kind of windy, but it was well worth it. And I got some great pictures. So that was my first night in New York City. My second day in New York City was our first full day. So we had tons of things planned. We were going to Radio City Music Hall, Rockefeller Center, Lincoln Center. We were going to go to Central Park. And this was also the day we were going to go to our first Broadway show. So I'm going to tell you not everything that we did because it would get too long. I'm going to pick my favorite things of the whole day. And bear with me because everything was my favorite thing. So we started the day meeting up with our tour guide. This was the day we first met up with Jerry, and he's the one that took us around New York City throughout the whole trip. The first place he took us was Rockefeller Center. Now, of course, I was excited to go to Rockefeller Center. That's where they do the ice skating during the winter. That's where they put up the big Christmas tree. And speaking of the Christmas tree, I saw the exact spot where they put up the Christmas tree. I got so excited, took a picture of that because they have it labeled. I took a picture of the ice skating rink, which is very beautiful. Since we were a little early for our Radio City Music Hall tour, he took us to the NBC building, things like Saturday Night Live, the Kelly Clarkson Show, and Jimmy Fallon were filmed there. I got so excited that I cried because that was the first place we actually got to go into and look around. So inside, it's just a bunch of shops, and there was a souvenir shop. So, of course, I bought a few NBC items like Saturday Night Live hat, Jimmy Fallon shot glass. And then it was time for our Radio City Music Hall tour, which, if you don't know, I was super excited before we left for this because I've always wanted to go to Radio City Music Hall. This is the place where they do the Tonys, where the Rockettes are, and I was going to get to meet a Rockette. I told everybody before I left that I was going to get to meet a Rockette, so I was super excited. Now, before we went to Radio City Music Hall, we had a little choice to make. Somebody asked if we wanted to go to a taping of the Kelly Clarkson show. So there was a little dilemma there for me because I love Kelly Clarkson, but I also wanted to meet Rockette. I ultimately chose to go to Radio City Music Hall and meet a Rockette, and I don't regret that one bit. For one, Kelly Clarkson was not even at the show. Touring Radio City Music Hall was so cool. The building is beautiful, and I was in the place where they do the Tony Awards. And you know I love watching the Tony Awards. I did a whole episode about the nominees last year. So I was super excited to just be in the building where they hold the Tony Awards. I was just excited to be in the auditorium. We got to sit in the seats and look at the stage. We didn't get to go on the stage, which I was a little disappointed. But then the tour guide took us all around the Radio City Music Hall, which is beautiful. We finally got into the Hall of the Rockettes. So I was getting super excited because it was almost time to meet a Rockette. And then we got to meet her, and she was super nice, and she told us all about her journey and different things about the Rockettes. What I did learn is there is no height requirement for being a Rockette, which I thought there was. I talked a little bit about that in my episode about New York City music venues, but there is no height requirement for being a Rockette. They just put the tallest people in the middle and fan the others out so it looks proportional when they do all their high kicks. But she was very nice and told us all about the Rockettes, and then we got to take a picture with her. And I was the first one to take a picture because, as you know, I was super excited to meet a Rockette. One thing I want to say is the bathroom at Radio City Music Hall is so beautiful. It's like this big whole lounge area. It was just awesome. I took pictures in the bathroom of Radio City Music Hall. I took so many pictures. We also got to go to the apartment that's in Radio City Music Hall that I talked about in my New York City music venue episode. So that was cool just to be in there. I did forget to ask about the Chamber of Secrets, and I kind of regret that, but there's always next time. All right, and then it was time to ride the subway for the very first time. Now, before I went to New York City, I was kind of nervous about riding the subway, but it was so much fun. I loved riding the subway, and it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be to get on and off. It is a little difficult if you don't know where you're going. So if you get on the wrong train, you could end up on the other side of town, and it would take you a long time to get back. But the subway was super fun. That took us to Lincoln Center. I got to see the Metropolitan Opera House, which I also talked about in my New York City music venue episode. Also, on the way to Lincoln Center, we walked past Juilliard, the School of Musical Geniuses. So I took myself a selfie of me with the sign that said Juilliard. So now I can always say I went to Juilliard. So that was cool. We got to go to Central Park, which we didn't get to walk around in Central Park as much as I would have liked. We were all tired by that time because we had walked a lot all around the city. So we were tired, and we had to get back to our hotel to get ready for our first Broadway show. Now, this was the night that I was going to see Aladdin. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the musicals I saw after I tell you about the other days, but that was my first day in New York City. I got to meet a Rockette. I got to go in the NBC building. I got to go to Central Park, got to ride the subway for the first time. And this was also the day that I had my first slice of New York pizza, actual New York pizza in New York City. We went to this little bodega that sold it by the slice, and it was so good. I had mushroom pizza. Anyway, that was my first day in New York City. I'll tell you about the musicals later in this episode. Day 3 in New York City, I'm going to call the historical day. And this was another long day. We were going to the 9/11 Museum and Memorial and the Statue of Liberty in Ellis Island. I was super excited about both places because I love history and I love to see where things happened, I guess. So we had to get up early because we had to take the subway all the way downtown, which was super fun because I loved riding the subway. It was a long subway ride this time, which I didn't mind one bit. This subway is fun. I loved it. I still have my Metro card. I kept it as a souvenir. So once we got downtown, we went to the 9/11 Memorial and Museum area. We were a little early to go into the museum, so we walked around the memorial area, and it has 2 fountains in it, and both fountains are in the places where the original towers stood. The fountains are beautiful, and all along the edge, there are the names of the people who died during 9/11, so it was sad, but beautiful. There was not much noise going on, and it was calm and quiet and peaceful, which is understandable because a tragic thing happened there. We got to see the One World Trade Center, the new tower that they built. It is beautiful, and it's the tallest building in New York City now, not the Empire State Building anymore, which I didn't know that until I went on this trip. One funny thing, at the fountains, there were ducks in it. My niece got excited and she took so many pictures of the ducks in the fountains. But it was just beautiful to walk around there and just observe all the buildings in the area and see the One World Trade Center. And then it was time to go into the museum for our tour. Now, in the museum, I did not take any pictures because I didn't feel right about it. I took a few pictures at the memorial because I was outside. But inside the museum, it's very sad, but interesting. They have like different artifacts from the 9/11 tragedy. You can see some of the remnants of the buildings that fell. So that was kind of cool. They have like fire trucks and different things found in the rubble. And then there is this one area where you go into and it's just people talking about the people who died. So that was very sad in there. The part that made me want to cry was all the missing person papers that they put up. That was sad. I had to walk away because I was about to cry. But it was very sad, but interesting in there. And I did not take any pictures, but I'm glad I went because it's a part of our history. After we got done at the 9/11 Memorial and Museum, we walked some more through the streets of New York. We walked through the financial district, and I saw Wall Street. We saw the Wall Street Bull, which was cool. I got a selfie with that. And then we also saw Trinity Church, which is where Alexander Hamilton is buried. So that was cool. I took a picture of his grave, his wife's grave, and their son's grave. And then we walked to catch the ferry to the Statue of Liberty. And as we got closer to the ferry, I could see the Statue of Liberty in the distance. It was very tiny, of course, but I took a picture and you have to zoom in to see the Statue of Liberty. But I was getting more and more excited. When you tour the 9/11 Museum and when you go to the Statue of Liberty, you have to go through security, kind of like you do at an airport. And I don't remember if it was at the 9/11 Museum or the Statue of Liberty, but one of those places I kept beeping through the security gates. And so the guy told me that I had to step aside and get checked. So I had to spread my arms and legs and get frisked. So that was nice and exciting and embarrassing. That's something fun that happened during the trip. I remember seeing the Statue of Liberty for the first time, and it was so amazing. Can you imagine being an immigrant coming to the United States and seeing the Statue of Liberty and knowing you're there in America? That's what I was imagining when I was looking at the Statue of Liberty, but I got some great pictures of it, and she is beautiful. The Statue of Liberty, huge and beautiful, and it was so cool. We did not get off at Liberty Island, which I kind of regret. Next time I would get off at Liberty Island and explore around the Statue of Liberty, but I got some great pictures. We were pushed on time, so we elected to go to Ellis Island, which is interesting, but it's a lot of reading in there, and I got bored, truthfully. We got bored and we were tired from all the walking through the streets of New York all day, and it was a lot of walking through the museums. So we were tired, and then we had to rush back to get to the hotel so we could get ready for our second show of the trip, which this one I was super excited about because this was the night that I got to see Wicked on Broadway. And I'll tell you more about that later in the section about my Broadway musicals. But that concluded day 3 of my New York City trip, and it was amazing and long and tiring, but very historical, and I really enjoyed day 3. Okay, everybody. Day 4 of my New York City trip was the final full day in New York City. I was very excited about this day because this is when we were going to go to the Museum of Broadway. I had been looking forward to this museum since I saw that we were going to go because, as you know, I'm obsessed with all things Broadway. So a museum dedicated to my favorite thing was something I really wanted to do. We got up early that day, so we were ready before we had to go to the museum. So me and my mom decided to go to this little bakery that was close to our hotel. So I had a New York croissant in New York, which was cool. My original plan before I went on this trip was to eat a croissant in front of the window of the store Tiffany's because of the movie Breakfast at Tiffany's. But we didn't see Tiffany's, and I don't think we walked down Fifth Avenue. So after breakfast, we headed to the museum with the group. And as I walked in, I was already excited because the first thing you saw was the gift shop. So I knew I was going to spend so much money when we were done. And I did. When we started the tour, you have to go through this door and you go up a whole bunch of steps because the museum actually starts on the 3rd floor, which is cool because as you went up the steps, it was kind of like you were backstage at a Broadway musical, which I loved because I've always wanted to be backstage at a Broadway musical or on a stage or in a musical or anything that was involved with a musical. So I was excited just going up the steps to the museum, and that wasn't even part of the museum. That was just how you got to the 3rd floor. We got to the 3rd floor, and everything is set up in timeline order. So it starts back when Broadway started, and it goes up until now times. So we saw some costumes from some of the first musicals that were on Broadway, which were beautiful. We started to get to the sets of shows that I had heard of. I remember the first one that I got excited about was Oklahoma because they had the whole cornfield set up in there. I took a selfie with the corn and it looks like I'm in a cornfield. And then they had some of the costumes, which I loved. One of my favorite sets, though, was West Side Story. When I got to that set, it was so cool because it was set up as that little store that they hang out in. And it looked just like the store. It had the cash register, the bar. It had some items behind the counter. It had a table and a bench seat. It also had a jukebox in there. There was also some costumes around. When you were in the museum, you could sit on anything that looked like a seat. You couldn't play with the props or touch the props or the costumes or anything like that, but you could take pictures in the set. So that was really cool. I took a picture behind the counter and it looked like I was running the cash register, which I know all about because I work at a retail store and I have done cashiering for years. So that was fun. My sister took a picture in that set with the payphone. She actually took the phone off the hook and looked like she was making a call, which I don't think we were supposed to touch the phone, but we got away with it and I got a good picture of her. The next set that I got so excited about was the set from Hair because it was beautiful. It was all flowery and you get to sit on a swing with flowers behind it and it said, "Let the sun shine in." So I got a great picture of me on the swing from Hair. Another of the sets that I got really excited about, and let me tell you, I got excited over every little section that I went in. Like every time I went to another section of a Broadway musical, I got excited and I probably squealed and I was like, "Oh my gosh, look at this." Everywhere I went in that museum, I loved it so much. Another of the sets that I really liked was the set from Rent, because Rent is one of my favorite musicals. It's my first actual Broadway show. I saw it at the Fox in St. Louis a long time ago, and then my second one was Wicked. So I was very excited to see the set of Rent. It was awesome. And then I turned the corner at one point, and I remember it was the setup of The Wiz, but I looked around the corner and there were stairs to go down to the next level, but they were decorated kind of like the Yellow Brick Road, because The Wiz is based on The Wizard of Oz. On the wall above the stairs, it said "Ease on Down the Road," which is one of the songs from The Wiz. I love the musical The Wiz. I've only seen the live version that they did a few years ago, but I love the music of The Wiz. So walking down the yellow brick stairs was so cool because it made me feel like I was in The Wizard of Oz and The Wiz and Wicked and all that. I love that musical, or I love The Wizard of Oz. So anything related to The Wizard of Oz, I got excited about. And then, there was sets from all kinds of different musicals, and then they had a bunch of props. Like I remember the lamp from Aladdin, the boots from Kinky Boots. They had the puppet from Into the Woods of the cow, Milky White. So that was cool. I took a picture with Milky White. That was one of my favorites too. Some of the other things I got excited about in the museum was they had a bunch of different costumes that were worn by the actual people. My favorite costume that I saw was the costume that Cynthia Erivo wore in The Color Purple. And I remember the first clip I saw of her was her singing "I'm Here" from The Color Purple in that specific costume. So that was really cool. And then you got closer to the end of the museum and it got to the part where it showed you like the making of Broadway musicals, which I was really interested in because I've always wanted to write a musical or a play. I have written plays, but I've always wanted them to go to Broadway. So that was interesting. I just really loved that museum so much. The Museum of Broadway was one of my favorite things that we did in New York City. And then, we went to the gift shop. I spent all my money. And that was the only big thing that we had planned that day. The rest of the day, it was really, we were free to do whatever we want. So me, my sister, and my niece decided to stick around the hotel and just walk around the streets of New York. And we went to find a place to eat. We were going to go to the bar that is on How I Met Your Mother, but when we got there, it was closed. But I do have a picture of it. So we found a different restaurant to eat in, and then we went back to the hotel and just relaxed a little bit. And that is the only time during this whole entire trip that I got to listen to the playlist that I created for this trip. Later that night before the show, we went to one of the restaurants that was in the hotel, and it was a nice fancy Italian restaurant, really good food. And then we went to our final Broadway show, which was The Lion King, and I'll talk more about that in just a little bit. But that was day 4. It's probably my second favorite day of the whole entire trip because I loved the Museum of Broadway so much. I would go back there if I went to New York City again. Definitely. That museum gets a 2 thumbs up from me. And that brings us to day 5, my final day in New York City, the day I had to fly back home and leave the city of my dreams. It was sad, but we had one more adventure to go on before we flew out. We went on the Circle Line cruise around Manhattan, which was awesome. It was a little foggy that day, so we didn't get to go around the whole island. We basically made a big loop, but I got to see a lot of the New York skyline. I got some great pictures. Since it was foggy, I thought my pictures were really cool because in my pictures, you can't see the tops of the buildings. I loved the pictures with the tops cut off of the buildings. It was cool. Also on this cruise, I got better pictures of the Statue of Liberty than I did when we went to the Statue of Liberty, which was surprising because I thought we'd be closer to the Statue of Liberty when we were going to the Statue of Liberty, but it seemed like I got better close-up pictures of the Statue of Liberty on this cruise. I remember we saw the Brooklyn Bridge and the Manhattan Bridge, and I think I saw New Jersey on this cruise. So I probably have a picture of New Jersey. After the cruise was over, we had to go back to the hotel, grab our bags, take the shuttle to the airport, and that's when we were going to fly back to Missouri. I was sad about that, but I had a great time on this trip. Now that I have told you about everything I did on the 5 days I was in New York, let me tell you some more about the Broadway shows that I saw. As you know, I saw Aladdin, Wicked, and The Lion King. Aladdin was my very first Broadway show that I attended in New York City. I loved Aladdin. I saw it at the Fox a few years ago, and it was awesome. That's why I agreed to go again. It was even better in New York City, and I thought it was really good at the Fox, but it was even better on Broadway. The theater was the New Amsterdam Theater. It's kind of a smaller theater than the other 2 we went to, but our seats were really good, and I could see all the actors' faces. I get so excited when the genie came out and I could see his face. I cried because I was excited. I was also excited to see my favorite song performed again, live, High Adventure. That's the one where they do sword fight choreography, which I love. So the show was amazing. All the cast was amazing. My niece and I were really looking forward to going to the stage door of all these shows we were going to, and we did that with Aladdin, but we got there a little late. So we only got there in time to see the guy who played Aladdin and the girl who played Jasmine, which are the main stars, so that's fine. But I missed my favorite of Aladdin's friends. Thank goodness my mom got there early, and she got 2 more autographs that we didn't get, but we got the autograph of the guy who plays Aladdin and the girl who plays Jasmine. The first time I saw the guy who played Aladdin, I was starstruck. I just looked up at him and I said, "Hi, Aladdin." And then he signed my playbill, and I told him I'd seen him in St. Louis because he was the same Aladdin that I saw in St. Louis, which was cool. So I knew he was great. He was very nice, and he signed my playbill, and I told him it was our first time in New York, and he asked how it was, and I said I loved it. And then we met the girl who plays Jasmine. She's also super nice. She signed our playbills. I get a selfie with her. I forgot to ask the guy who played Aladdin, which I kind of regret, but that was my experience at Aladdin. It was awesome. And then the next show I saw, as you know, I was very excited to see because it was Wicked, my all-time favorite musical. Now, I'd seen Wicked at the Fox many years ago, probably 20 years ago, and it was great. But seeing it on Broadway was so exciting because it's my favorite musical of all time. I remember we were a little rushed getting to that show, so we got in our seats right before the show started. But when it started, I was so excited, and it was everything I had dreamed of. And then it got to my favorite part, the moment I was really looking forward to, defying gravity. And I was really waiting to see Elphaba fly up into the sky, and that was amazing. It's so cool to see that live, and I cried. My most recent experience with Wicked has been the movie that just came out, but as you know, that's only the first half of Wicked. So, seeing the musical on Broadway, I got to see the second half. And the whole show was amazing. The cast was awesome. And then me and my niece got out of there really quick, got to the stage door, and we got to meet 5 of the cast members. I remember we met the guy who played Bach, the wizard, the girl who played Nessa, the guy who played Fiero, and then there was an ensemble member who was also the understudy for Madame Horrible. Unfortunately, the actors who played Elphaba and Glinda did not come out, but that was okay because I got 5 other autographs, so that was amazing. I loved it. Wicked is at the Gershwin Theater. Beautiful theater. Oh my God. Even the lobby, or like the outside part, is beautiful. And it has escalators in it, and it was so awesome. And I bought so many souvenirs at Wicked. You might be surprised to know that I don't have a lot of souvenirs from Wicked, but I do now. I bought a ton of souvenirs. And then the last show we saw on Broadway was The Lion King. I was really looking forward to The Lion King. The Lion King was at the Minskoff Theater, and that theater is also huge and beautiful and has escalators in it. That show is so amazing because of the way that they use people to represent the animals. When the show started, it was so cool because during Circle of Life, when the animals march into Pride Rock to honor Simba, they march down the aisles in the auditorium. So they're like right next to you. And I remember the big giant elephant puppet. That was so amazing. I noticed it first and tapped my niece on the shoulder and showed her, but I was like in awe. That whole show was amazing. The way that they did that and the cast being animals, it was so cool. And I did do an episode about The Lion King. If you want to listen to it, I'll link it in the show notes. But that show was so cool and one of my favorites I've seen ever. After the show was over, me and my niece rushed out really fast, got to the stage door, and then we got to meet 5 of those cast members too. We got to meet young Nala, young Simba, Pumbaa, Timon, and Mufasa. So they all signed our playbills, and adult Simba and adult Nala did not come out again, but that's okay. Any Broadway star that I've ever met, they're all really nice and so personable and just lovely. And that's the shows I saw in New York City. Amazing shows, and I can't wait to go back to New York City and see more shows. Before we end this episode, let me tell you about my top 3 favorite things that I experienced while being in New York City. As you know, I loved everything I did, but the number one thing, besides all the Broadway shows I got to see, would have to be just walking around the city and seeing the sights and just being there. That was the most exciting, just all the walking and looking around. Number 2 is Radio City Music Hall and meeting a Rockette. I had been looking forward to that for a long time, and it was amazing. I can't wait to watch the Tonys this year and remember that I was in that auditorium. So that's going to be so cool. The third favorite thing of the trip would have to be the Museum of Broadway. That was the best museum I've ever been to, ever. I don't know what could top it except for maybe the Academy Museum that deals with movies in Los Angeles. It was an amazing trip and I had so much fun and I can't wait to go back again. Of course, I'm going to go back again someday. But next time, I'm hoping to walk around Central Park more because I didn't get to walk around Central Park. So that's the first thing I would do when I went back to New York City, and then see more Broadway shows. While I was there, I got a ton of souvenirs. I got hats, I got a pen, I got a bunch of stuff at the Broadway Museum and Wicked and the Lion King. I didn't buy anything at Aladdin because last time I went to Aladdin in St. Louis, I bought everything, but I got tons of souvenirs. I spent so much money on that. We had great food. One thing I forgot to mention in this episode is after Aladdin, we got to go to Sardi's, which is a restaurant that I've been wanting to go to forever. It's the restaurant where they put up the drawn pictures of actors and actresses and famous people everywhere. And usually there are famous people eating in there. There was no famous people when we went, but it was okay. And just like that, my dream trip to New York City comes to an end, at least for now. From breathtaking views to Broadway magic, every moment was unforgettable, and I loved sharing it all with you. I am so sorry if I rambled on and this episode ends up being really long. I apologize for that, but I had an amazing time. If you've ever dreamed of visiting NYC, I hope this episode gave you a little taste of the excitement and maybe even some inspiration to plan your own adventure. And hey, the fun doesn't stop here. Next week, I'm going to be slowing things down and diving into some of the most beautiful lullabies from musicals. These songs may be soft and soothing, but trust me, they're packed with heart and emotion, and I can't wait to share them with you. If you loved this episode, be sure to share it with your friends or anyone who dreams of the Big Apple. And don't forget to hit that follow button so you never miss an episode of The Music of Me. Until next time, keep dreaming big, and maybe, just maybe, your dream trip will be next. Peace out, everybody. This has been the Music in Me podcast. Subscribe now so you don't miss a beat.